Welcome back, everyone. This is Ayad Budiab, and we are proceeding with our Angular course. We've been recently talking about services, and that's the subject of today's discussion as well. I'd like to talk about services and specifically the HTTP service, which allows me to retrieve some data from a certain URL. In this case, we have a local file called courses.json, and that's what you see on your screen right now. We know when we're making HTTP requests, and especially when we're talking AJAX and asynchronous requests, we need to update portions of the page. We don't want to reload the whole page, right? Because that will of course be time consuming. So we need to load small portions. That's pretty much what we use JSON for. And in this case, I'm just going to load this content into a table. So I'll create a table. I will have I'll set up Angular with the controller and the module, and also we'll see how we can make a call to http.get to retrieve courses.json and be able to load that data into the table. As you can see on your screen, you have the names and the classes, the costs and the credits. This is part of the courses. We have 6 courses here, right? This is the first one. This is the second one, and so on. You know the data is separated with curly braces here that represent one whole object. And then you have the square brackets that represent the whole array. The array contains 6 records. Every record is separated from the other one with a comma. Inside each record, I'll have a key value pairs, name John, comma, class Java, comma, cost 750, and then credits 3. That's how the courses.json file is set up. And this courses.json is in the same folder as the HTML file that I have. Now, one thing that you might notice differently on your screen is that I'm not using Sublime Text in this case. I'm using Visual Studio because it automatically provides me with a web service, right? I need that web server on the that loads the page for me because I'm using HTTP GETs. So therefore, I need a web server running. And instead of going through the trouble of setting up different web servers through different tools and so on, Visual Studio is for free. I can download it, and it automatically comes with IIS Express, and I can use that to load the pages and work through them. This is a little bit easier. And mainly I use this approach because I don't want to get out of my way of explaining Angular concepts to setting up a web server and dealing with other stuff. Okay, so I'm assuming that you're using some type of web server, maybe using Node.js to set up a web server on your end. But whatever the case is, you need to have that web server running, otherwise it will not load the page for you, or pretty much the content, because you're using HTTP GET. Okay, so again, I'm using Visual Studio Express 2013, and pretty much this is for free, and you can download it, install it, experiment with it. All what I have right now is a project that contains those 2 files. But one thing that a little bit different about Visual Studio is you need to make sure in the config file you set up the let me change here to a smaller size. You need to set up the system.observer so it can understand this extension of JSON. Okay, so that's something you need to set up on in the web.config in order for this one to work. And that's all what you need. Anytime you come to the page, right click, you say view in browser, it starts IIS, and you'll be able to see the content. So then back to here, we're done with JSON. That's the content of the file. It exists within the same directory. I'll provide that to you with the download for the video. And then don't forget the config. Now back to our HTTP service.html file. As you can see, the file has an ng app called HTTP app. We are referencing scripts Angular.js. I'm also referencing styles, bootstrap.min.css, and bootstrap theme.min.css because I need to be styling the tables, right? So I need bootstrap in this case. You might not have the min version, but either way, make sure you have Bootstrap and Bootstrap theme as style sheets. And in my case, I have them under the styles folder. That's why I'm referencing them this way. And the Angular is under the scripts folder. Just this might be differently on your machine depending on where you have Angular and Bootstrap installed or actually copied. So now I have the body of the page contains a div with a class panel that comes of course from Bootstrap, and then I have a class panel body. That's the body of this panel that you see here. We start with a table. The table has some CSS classes also. It's a table striped, it's bordered, and when you hover over it you will see the colors changing, and then it's condensed so it doesn't just be a big table, just the spaces are condensed pretty much. Based on the actual courses.json, I have a name, class, cost, and credit, and as you can see here in the table header, I have name, class, cost, and credit. There's a th for every one of those guys in one tr that's within the header. And then in here I have the table body. Oops, I have an extra closing bracket here. I have the table body that has nothing right now, and then a paragraph that has nothing right now either. So I need to go back to the script and make sure that I set up Angular before I go in and make my changes in the body of the page. As you all know, we start in this case with Angular and then .module, right? And then we give it the name. That will be HTTP app, because that's what the name is up here, right? HTTP app, they match. And then this module does not depend on any other module, so I'll put the square brackets. Okay, and then I will go here, dot controller. You know that Visual Studio will have IntelliSense to help me with my work, which is also very handy. And that controller will also be named, in this case, HTTP controller. Okay, and this will be, I'll provide the function here. With that function comes the scope. I inject the scope, I need that, but also I need the HTTP service, because in this case, of course, we're working with the HTTP service, so we need to bring that in, right? Okay, that's the body of the function here. And then after I provide the name of the controller and specify my function, I'll have the scope dot load courses, and then that will be equal to a function, and that's the body of the function here. Okay, and then in this case, that's where I need to define my HTTP.get, right? That's what I need to say, okay, go get me that data and do something with it. Let me make sure I close my parenthesis here to close the controller. And then within the body of the function, I would say in here $HTTP and then .get. I indicate the name of the file that I need, courses.json. Once I get this HTTP.get, that pretty much gives me the actual file, and then I will also append to it whether there was a success or a fail. In this case, I would say .success means if you successfully were able to get that file, I want you to execute the following function. So I'll specify in here function, and then that function takes the data as a parameter. Of course, you can name anything you want, but that's by default we call it a data. And then in here, I'll make sure that I close the function body, and if I'm able to get that data, I need to make sure that the scope dot courses equal to the data. Okay. Now in this case, maybe things are not clear yet. I think I have an extra parenthesis here. The information is not very clear yet, but once we set up the body down here, it will make more sense. So all what we've done over here right now is create the module, does not depend on anything, create the controller, right? And then it's HTTP controller, that's the name of it. And then we indicated that as a function that takes the scope, but in this case we injected the HTTP as well, so we'll be able to use it over here. And then inside the body of this function, we say scope.load courses equal a function, and you will see where this load courses is, because right now it doesn't make sense, right? But we'll see it shortly. Equal a function, and then HTTP get the courses.json. In the case of success, I want you to take that data that comes back and then assign it to the courses. Okay? And by the way, before we forget, let's go make sure in here in the body we have the ng controller equal the name of the controller, which is the HTTP controller here. So now that's available for the whole body. Okay. Now you might be asking the question, well, where is the rest of the information, and what do you mean by load data, and where that courses can be used, right? Okay. Well, let's go back to the table in here, and then you see that the body, we need to fill that out with some information. The first thing that I need to fill it with is in case there is no data. What do you want to do? If there is no data, I want you to use ng hide. Okay. Now, as the name implies, ng hide will hide something if a certain condition does not apply. Remember that we get the data when we call the courses that when we call the get to get the JSON data in here. If we get that data, scope.courses will contain that data. If for some reason we didn't get that data, courses is empty. All right. So in here then courses.length is 0. So in this case then the section in here will be hidden, right? And then in the case of this courses.length did not apply, I'm going to display to the user a column that fills up the whole, a row that fills up the ATD that fills up the whole row that says no courses available, right? And this is by default. When the page loads at first, there's no data, so we'll display that to the user. Okay. Now, in case that we get the data, now we need to display those rows of data in here. Here's the row. For that row, obviously we'll use ng repeat. We've done that before. For each course in courses that we got here, we're going to we say course.name, course.class, course.cost displayed as currency. Remember filters? We're piping that into currency, and then courses.credits to display the credits to the user. Okay. Now, obviously this all is fine, but how does the data load? We need to have a button, right? So that button will display to the user. So when the user clicks on it, they'll be able to get the data. All right, so we display a button. It's a primary button that's from Bootstrap. When the user clicks on it, you say load courses, right? And this is the text load courses. Where's that load courses? It's up here. You see that? So when the user clicks on this button, load courses, and click on this courses, load courses, I'm going to execute the following function. The function will do an HTTP get. It will get courses.json. In case of success, it takes the data that comes back and populate the scope.courses. Now the scope.courses contains the data. I'll do ng repeat on those rows and then populate the actual table. Okay. Let's go ahead and save this. And hopefully we did not make any mistakes with the actual content. I can right click on the page and view in browser. As you can see in here, name, class, cost, and credits. It says no courses available. As you can see over here, we have ng height. The courses.length right now is 0. So I'm going to show the no courses available, right? And then now that the page is here, I can click on load courses. And as you can see that I have right now the actual content, the 6 rows from the JSON file being displayed. You know that the actual cost is in currency format. You see, as I hover over, I'm getting this type of action because I have table hover, right? When I hover over the table, I'm seeing this this animation, or just the actual row being highlighted and so on. The table is condensed, right? You see the content. Probably if I take that condensed out and save and reload the page, click, and you see the content is a bit different, but the condensed one will eliminate those extra spaces that you see here. Okay, so that's pretty much how this works. If I do Control Z, save that, reload it, load courses, now you see it's smaller and condensed, right? Okay, so that's pretty much how I can work with HTTP GET. You have seen the ng repeat, you have seen the ng hide, you have seen tables and CSS and so on. What's interesting in this case is basically the ability to use HTTP GET to be able to load some content. Upon success, you'll be able to do something with the data, and we'll discuss this in more detail, because also we'll see what else we can do in terms of what comes after HTTP success. I'm sorry, after success. So this is pretty much the way we work with HTTP GET. If you have any questions, please let us know on Mr. Bull website. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Ayad Boudiab, and you take care.